Welcome back everyone, it's All Time here. Today we're looking back to the past and exploring 5 history Mandela effects. What does this mean exactly? Well, these 5 historical details that I'm talking about today have seemingly been altered, changed, or maybe they were always this way and we simply never noticed. We all know the Mandela effect can change something small, but what about something big? Everyone knows that a small ripple can become a massive wave, and likewise, these small effects can seemingly create big changes, as in the butterfly effect. One small change can lead to thousands of changes in history. Now that you have the basic premise, let's open up this history book. We're starting today's journey into the past all the way back to World War II. This first historical Mandela effect is regarding attacks done to America during this war. We all know about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And in a previous video, I talked about the explosive balloon bombs that Japan attempted to float across the sea to lay siege to the western United States. Well, today we're talking about attacks on the eastern coast of the United States during World War II. Specifically German attacks that resulted in the death of over 5,000 Americans. Here's my question for you. Did 5,000 Americans die on the East Coast during World War II? Yes or no? The answer now is an unfortunate yes. 5,000 Americans. Do you remember learning about what I'm talking about, or is your brain blanking on this one? Well, you aren't alone. Apparently they blew up over 400 American ships, which resulted in the death of over 5,000 Americans. We're talking Nazi submarines off the coast, as far down as even North Carolina. What? Apparently, these submarines were hunting Allied ships and attempted to, and in some cases succeeded in, destroying them before supplies and armaments could reach the Allied forces fighting in Europe. Here's a tease of some of the previously unknown but now apparently always known stuff that went down on the East Coast in the United States during World War II. An oil tanker explosion off the coast of North Carolina by Nazi torpedoes. Submarine blockades in the Delaware Bay. Giant coastal watchtowers in New Jersey searching for subs. Soldiers on horseback and Coast Guard officers patrolling beaches looking for landing spies. And even a massive blimp squadron patrolling American skies looking for enemy submarines. Do you remember learning about any of this before this video? A documentary maybe? A history book? A teacher? If you're like many online, you've never heard of any of this. So you might be thinking, maybe this is all classified or top secret. Nope. It was published in newspapers and news media back in the day. So it wasn't like this information was a secret. So why do so few people know any of this? Is it a simple lack of education? And if that's the case, then why do some self-proclaimed history buffs also seem confused? Did everyone just forget these events? Did all of these things happen and people are only recently rediscovering the modern past? Or is this another case of the Mandela effect, where small changes over time produce big differences from what we remember learning? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Up next is one of the earliest examples of a Mandela effect, but also one of the most compelling. What Mandela effect am I talking about? The 35th President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, or better known today as JFK. On November 22nd, 1963, tragedy struck when JFK was assassinated while riding in his motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Now, this awful day isn't in dispute. This actually happened, obviously. But what is in dispute are the details surrounding it. Some claim that the footage was originally in black and white, but now it's in color. Others claim it originally didn't have sound, but now it does. But the biggest Mandela effect surrounding that day is the car JFK was riding in. It was an open-top 1961 Lincoln Continental 4-door convertible. What a mouthful. Now here's my question. On that fateful day, how many people were sitting in the car? Was it 4 people, or was it 6 people? The correct answer is now 6 people. The famous Zapruder film now shows a total of 6 people riding in the Lincoln Continental, instead of the 4 that so many people seem to remember. So where do you stand on this? Here is some interesting leftover residue arguing the case for 4 people. There are multiple museums across America with replica cars from that day, and they only have 4 seats. I've been to one of these museum displays myself, and it's a really weird detail to miss out on, that you rebuilt an exact replica of that car, but you have 4 seats instead of 6. I'm supposed to assume that everyone overlooked that small detail of an extra row of seats? Huh. Numerous books out there detailing the mystery surrounding JFK's death also make the mistake of saying the car only had 4 passengers. Even classic movies regarding the death of JFK make the same mistake. So is it all a mistake? Was no one paying attention at any point of production over the past 60 years? I think the biggest and most damning detail surrounding this historical Mandela Effect is that the Secret Service got it wrong. In the investigative reenactment film made of the assassination by the Secret Service, they utilized a 4-person version of the car. How on earth could such a monumentally important aspect of the recreation be recreated incorrectly? Well, I'll let you decide. To this day, this one still has people confused. Typically, the most standout moments in history are tied to war, conflict, and terror because of the shock and awe. These are the moments that stick out in people's minds. But this next Mandela Effect is different. It's shocking because it throws away a common belief about a specific historical figure. Which figure? Well, none other than the Christian figure Jesus Christ. So here is my question for you. What was Jesus' profession while he was alive? Was he a stonemason or a carpenter? You know, if it's in my video, something's gotta be off. Jesus was in fact not a carpenter, but a stonemason. The original assumption of carpentry came from a mistranslation centuries ago of the Greek word tekton, meaning craftsman or builder. Apparently no one noticed this incorrect translation for centuries. Another detail backing up this fact is that the majority of homes built back then in now modern day Israel were built with stone. In fact, the area where Jesus would have grown up had and still has little to no trees. It's estimated that 9 out of every 10 projects would have been stone related, not wood related. Not to mention during the time of his life, Nazareth was only 3 miles from a stone quarry. This Mandela Effect is a well that you can fall down. There's lots of information and dozens of other pieces of historical evidence to back up this. So I'm just going to leave a link in the video description if you want to read more. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So you tell me, do you believe this major detail of Jesus' life simply went unnoticed for thousands of years, or has something changed? Is it possible that humans are simply gaining a better understanding of the ancient world, or has the Mandela Effect struck again? Either way, it's pretty fascinating, and I'd love to hear your take on it. Up next, we're talking about something that happened in June 1989, during the Tiananmen Square protests in China. A lone man, still unknown to this day, taking a bold stance and standing weaponless in front of a row of military tanks. The famous footage of this man is one of my personal earliest memories of being interested in history. Why was this man standing up to a tank, let alone a row of tanks? He must have known how little of a chance he stood, right? Was his belief that strong? Apparently was. So here's my Mandela Effect for you. What happened to that brave man in the moments afterwards? Did the tanks stop? Or did they crush him? Well, if you remember things like so many others do, you remember the tank unfortunately driving over the man. This was a haunting and gut-wrenching scene. The alleged memory goes that the act happened so quickly and so violently that it took even the cameraman a period of time to turn away and stop filming. But as it is now, the tank apparently stopped. His terrifyingly brave act stopped those tanks, if even just for a few moments. Now, this isn't just a personal Mandela Effect or a small-scale one. This was written about in books and old articles. People remember that brave guy being driven over, but as the footage shows now, he never was. In mainland China, this incident was called the June 4th incident, but outside of China as the June 4th massacre. But the true count to us will never be known. Before we get to number 1, I'd like to thank you all for watching. These videos take a lot of time, research, and effort. So the fact that you enjoy them, that makes me really happy. Seriously, it does. For our last historical Mandela Effect, we're traveling to Bologna, Italy. Not to be confused with the American butchering of the word bologna. The date is August 2nd, 1980. Today is the date of the Bologna Massacre. On this dreadful morning, a time bomb placed inside of an unattended suitcase was left in the waiting room at the Bologna Centrale railway station. When it went off, over 200 people were injured and over 85 people died. The blast collapsed the roof of the waiting room, destroyed most of the main buildings, and even hit a train waiting nearby for boarding. The station that day was filled with tourists and Italians seeking refuge from the blazing summer heat. This attack is known as the worst atrocity in Italy since World War II. Now, I bring up this awful tragedy because there is a fascinating Mandela Effect attached to it. Fascinating enough, it could be its own Mandela Effect mystery, like the video series that I have. But for now, we're just going to discuss it in this video. There is a giant clock on the wall of the Bologna station that stopped working at the exact moment of the attack. On the clock, it reads 10:25 a.m. Now here's where things get weird. Was the clock left at 10:25 a.m. in remembrance of this tragedy, or was it repaired right away? So tell me, was it left alone, or was it repaired right away? Thousands of people have gone on record as remembering the clock being left at 10:25 a.m. permanently. Newspapers talked about this and even photographs were taken, but now it turns out that it was repaired right away. And for 15 years the clock worked perfectly. In 1995, when it finally broke again, the clock was permanently set to 10:25 a.m. in remembrance of what had happened prior. So here's where things get weirder. An unbelievable number of people remember this clock being stopped all of those 15 years. So many, in fact, that scientific investigations were done to get to the bottom of this massive case of misremembering. This is one of the earliest modern examples of the Mandela Effect. So early, in fact, that the term Mandela Effect had not yet even been coined. The study showed that 92% of participants believed the clock had been broken the whole time. Not as in fixed right away, left on for 15 years, then stopped, but actually broken since 1980. 92%. Now, another 79% of participants claim to have personally seen the clock set to 10:25 a.m. And get this, that's 79%? That includes all 21 railway employees. An utterly staggering statistic. So if you know this case, what do you remember? Is this all a massive case of misremembering? Did everyone simply not pay attention for 15 years? Or has the Mandela Effect struck again?